Hello, folks, and welcome to the Know Better, Be Better podcast, a conversation on health and wellness where we explore various topics to increase our knowledge and understanding in order to grow holistically. I'm Daron Raynor.
And I'm Dani Ondreka, and we're here today talking about meditation.
So when we look at meditation, Dani, it's pretty much one of the biggest practices. It's a very common thing, especially since 2020 COVID, where a lot of people are trying to practice things of meditation and even more specifically mindfulness, right?
Even if they're not doing it, they're talking about wanting to do it.
Exactly, because we're trying to center ourselves, keep our mental health in check, and keep our whole self essentially in a state of awareness while also being able to better manage our situations, you know?
Absolutely.
So when we look at the word meditate specifically, we see that it means basically this: to engage in contemplation or reflection. But what exactly are we looking for in these two areas, right? With mindfulness, we see the practice of maintaining a non-judgmental state, heightening awareness of one's thoughts and emotions, and it's also an experience of a moment-to-moment basis. So it's not so much the emptying out, but rather it's just the focusing in on something particular. And in a previous episode that we did, you mentioned this point: our feelings don't always have to be real in the sense that they don't have to consume us. Our feelings are valid, but they don't have to take us over. So this is a great way to help manage those feelings, manage those emotions, right?
Yes, feelings are not facts. That's something we've discussed
Feelings are not facts.
Several times. So yeah, I mean, we'll continue to make that point again and again. I think it's a very, very valid one. So you touched on the awareness portion of things. So I think this is where a lot of people get confused about what meditation actually is. It is not the emptying everything out of your mind. It is really adding to it, but in a really focused, really pointed way. It is training your mind in attention. And I think a lot of us really could probably use a lot of training in that area. If you look at TV nowadays, you have commercials that are designed to flip through different scenes more quickly. The same thing with regular TV shows, with movies. We need more action, more. And our attention is constantly being diverted into all these different directions faster and faster and faster. So, I mean, we've seen things like ADHD on the rise, ADD, especially with younger kids who just really never learned how to pay attention correctly, right? And obviously there's a little bit more to it than that. We know that there are clinical diagnoses that exist, but as a society, I think we have a much harder time being able to pay attention. So many people do use meditation as a tool to relax, but if you are really working on training that awareness, it actually can be really energizing, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned the specifics of like a commercial, because a lot of times people have seen, I think, similar brain activity of watching commercials that have like 50 cut scenes in 30 seconds to that of like hypnosis. And it's not necessarily that you're trying to focus on something like that or trying to be so attentive to it, but because of the fast cut scenes, you're so zoned in on what's going on. Before you know it, you're like, oh, I want to buy a car, or whatever the case may be. But with the meditation aspect, you're zoning in with the intention of gaining attention to something. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So intentively being attentive to the situation. Trying to keep two words together. I thought it was, kind of flashy to put it in there.
That was really nice, yeah.
Oh, very good. So when we look at meditation, especially from the aspect of like health and wellness, how are we benefiting from that? If one decides that they're going to try and practice a little bit more mindfulness or practice focusing in or being reflective or whatever their way of meditation is, how are we benefiting from a health and wellness standpoint when we meditate?
Well, I think you are encouraging stability in really every sense of the word, able to control your emotions a little bit better, have a clearer mental state. You're just there's less clutter in your brain, So being able to really pick out what you're feeling leads you to be able to diagram why you're feeling it. And if you are a little more clear, just in your mind in general, you're able to work through those things a little more easily. So I think it's a phenomenal practice in every sense. You could bring it to any situation.
Yeah, it sounds like now that you said that, I think of it in a way like a spring cleaning or something. So for me, like every Friday afternoon, I'll clean my house up, and I'll focus my attention to different parts of the house, put things where I want it, kind of observe if something's off, if this is off center or whatever the case may be, and then I make the adjustments, or I try to actively resolve the issue, or I try to actively allow myself to be comfortable with whatever it is.
I'm imagining you with your ruler or your protractor, like making sure all the angles are correct.
But essentially, it's just taking it's doing a spring cleaning of the mind,
Yes.
right? It's taking time to go to each compartment of your brain or each compartment of your feelings, your emotions, and just essentially tapping into it, not in a way that is selfish, but in a way that kind of takes inventory to see, okay, got an intruder here. Or, okay, I kind of like this. How can I take this and run with it?
Yes, yeah, 100%. And I'm sure everyone listening could probably agree. If you've ever cleaned your house, cleaned out your car, cleaned off your desk at work, or gone through all your junk drawers, taken stock and threw away the stuff that really was junk that didn't need to be kept, you know how you feel, right? You feel a ton better. You're able to focus on some of the things that really matter because you're not so bogged down by all the other junk that's just hanging around. So it's taking that exact same concept to your brain.
Mm-hmm. So this is essentially a great medical practice for ourselves. Obviously, we're not physicians, so we're not telling people meditate to get rid of this or that. Talk to your primary care physician. Okay, just wanted to make sure we throw that out there. But there are actual benefits because a lot of times we have some of the different comorbidities or different types of manageable disease or issues in our body simply from stress or simply from a mental health standpoint, from like high blood pressure, hypertension, IBS, some of these different types of things can be stress-inducing diseases,
Absolutely. Everything in our world, it feels like, can contribute to stress if you don't know how to manage it well. And if you look at even causes of particular conditions, stress is almost always one of the things that's listed. So being able to learn to manage your emotions is a phenomenal skill. And the last thing, this last point I really want to make about why it's so beneficial is that it really helps you to get to know yourself. And I think that's so valuable because we spend so much time moving, worrying about our relationships with other people. If you have kids, you're worried about, if your kids are going to make it alive to school and, home still alive. And you have so many other things that you're focused on that just sitting with yourself is not a very common practice. We pride ourselves on being busy, on getting XYZ done during the day. And can we get more done the next day? Can we be more productive at work through our home life? It's more. That's the American way, right? So sitting with yourself and getting to know yourself, I think, should hold a higher esteem in all of our lives because don't you want to know you? I mean, don't you want to enjoy your life? And you can't do that if you don't know who you are.
Yeah, I'll speak from experience in a sense. I find myself oftentimes being very, very stuck in the past, usually in a negative past. So from mistakes to things that have happened to me or things that I did not like that I did or whatever the case may be, I dwell on that and I'll use that as a springboard for the future. That's a positive thing.
Yes.
But in between, in the present, I lack. So I don't find myself being very present mentally, so that oftentimes I wind up repeating the same mistakes because I'm so focused on, okay, I don't want to do this. I don't want to experience this anymore. Or I don't want this to happen. So I'm going to change this coming thing. But it's like when I was in high school, the teacher would always say, I'll give this assignment to you tomorrow. And his quote was, tomorrow never comes. It's all about the present. So for me personally, I got to take what I have, understand that the future is the goal, but the present is where the work happens. And oftentimes, especially from a mental, emotional standpoint, being mentally and emotionally present, taking stock and inventory. How do I feel right now in this moment? What am I doing right now in this moment? How am I thinking right now in this moment?
Yeah, I completely agree. And isn't it ironic that if we stay so focused on a mistake that we've made in the past, that we are much more likely to repeat it? You would think paying more attention to it would help you to get past that and to do better. But you really do have to focus on the now. And what am I going to do? Knowing that past does exist, but you have right now. Like, that's all you have. You can't hold on to yesterday because what can you do about that?
Absolutely.
Nothing. What can you do about right now? So many things. That's a valuable lesson.
And that's what hurts us many times is we find ourselves, again, just in that gap. We're in an empty space when we should be very much, all of our attention should be focused to that specific space of being mentally and emotionally present.
Yes, absolutely. So we know there are a lot of other benefits, right, medically to meditation. So take us through a couple more.
So when we look at some of these things, we see that there's a chance to decrease, like we said, high blood pressure, IBS, ulcerative colitis. Your anxiety and depression can maybe eased. Of course, we're not mental health experts, so it's very important to talk to somebody. It's always important to check in with somebody, but a lot of times those people try to help you to be more present as well and take more inventory of cause and effect, right?
Yes. I think it's wild how, as we were doing research on just your brain health and anxiety and depression, they're so related to your gut health.
Mm-hmm.
We see that over and over and over again. And a lot more people nowadays are having issues with their gut. And that's not to say that it's because of one specific thing. I mean, maybe it's because of your diet, maybe it's because of other things, but stress plays a really, really big part
Absolutely.
in that. That kind of surprised me a little bit.
Yeah, stress is kind of a fuel to what you decide to do with your actions. And we know that eating, while it's probably the most like, if I could say it this way, like the most like intimate intake of fueling the body, you know, you are what you eat, as they say.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's fueled by what's going on up here in the mind, right? So if you're in a stressed state, you're not thinking clearly, your mind's clouded, your judgment is clouded, you might go for something that is going to temporarily ease. You know, in an episode we talked about with the famous Jane Key. If you guys have not heard that episode,
Food
check
and
it out.
mood, yes.
Talking about how our
So true.
mood influences the food that we eat. And so a lot of times we find that ourselves, we are in our stressed and anxious states or even in depression and stuff like that. We look for quick fixes, but they're so extreme that when the bounce back happens, it's almost like a punch. So you wind up worse than what you started in, you know?
Yes, I love that visual as well because we're not trying to yo-yo back and forth, right? Yo-yo dieting is a really, really common term because people struggle with that when they try to lose weight and they go to an extreme there and then they really, really see that bounce back on the other side. You can apply that to probably anything in your life. Like we've discussed, you're trying to achieve homeostasis. Your body wants to be here at a single level and it wants to hang out there and it's going to do everything that it possibly can to its, you know, best ability to be able to do that, to stay there.
There's also a really interesting point in regards to how meditation is beneficial to the body is that there are some promising studies in terms of immune system regulation as well as managing symptoms of cancer.
Wow.
Again, we talk about stress. Stress is such a, they talk about heart disease as a silent killer, right? But stress is almost like one of the underlying silent killers to the silent killer. I don't know how else
it's
to
there.
put it, you know?
It's hanging out.
Yeah. And so a lot of times we wind up in these ruts or we wind up getting further and further and further into sickness or further and further into disease. A lot of times because we're not in a positive frame of mindset.
Yeah.
You know, we haven't taken time to really take inventory of how we're feeling, but also to practice positive thinking, to practice things that help to focus the mind on the good things that we have when it seems like things are not exactly going our way, period.
Right.
You know?
Which is hard. Like we're not trying to make it sound like that's the easiest thing. It is very, very difficult sometimes to be positive. If you're facing a really difficult diagnosis or maybe something is going on in your family that's been a really, really big stressor, it's hard to stay positive, but you should strive to look for those things in your life that are good because otherwise what's the point?
Yeah. So I guess when we're looking now, what is the brain activity that exactly is being healthfully worked on when it comes to the meditation side of
This is so cool. Okay, this is where I get really, really excited. So you have a portion of your brain that is called the amygdala. It's the part of your brain that processes all of your emotions. It takes in all of this stimulus and it decides, okay, what is the appropriate emotion to respond to whatever is happening outside of your body, okay, or inside your mind. And it does this even when you're not actively meditating. But when you do meditate, it does engage additional activity in your amygdala. So it's kind of giving that part of your brain a little more go-go juice. It's giving it a little more power so that it's able to regulate those emotions a little bit better, right? So I'm sure you may have experienced a moment where you were really stressed out about something and someone said something to you and maybe it rubbed you the wrong way, but because you were already stressed out or you were tired or whatever it was, you responded in a much more extreme manner than the situation probably dictated. Maybe you yelled, maybe you said something that you would come to regret later. Hopefully you didn't, but it happens to the best of us. And if your amygdala was a little bit more engaged, maybe it would have helped you to respond with a more appropriate emotional response.
Oh, wow. This is something I'm learning new here, folks.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
I think it's so cool. Your brain is so cool.
So it's essentially taking something and it's almost computing a response, but we can be in control of that response.
Absolutely. I mean, you're still in control. It's not to say that your brain is just like doing things without your permission. Of course, you are still in the driver's seat, but you want to make sure that you are firing on all cylinders and that all the pieces are working correctly to create that response.
Wow.
Give yourself the best chance to respond well.
I like the way you said that. Give yourself the best chance to respond well. And again, this comes under the aspect of what we're talking about, mindfulness. Just taking inventory, again, of how we're feeling, taking inventory of our thoughts, and trying to package them the right way by how we're going to respond to people, situations, but also how we're going to better manage potential roadblocks that we have been dealing with down the road.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the cool things that meditation and mindfulness does as well is it increases gyrification in your brain. So if you have seen a picture of the brain, it has all those really, really cute wrinkles and folds, which are they're really pretty. It increases the process of those folds, folding and folding and folding and creating more, which you actually really need. So the folds in your brain are really, really important. They're just generally for processing information. So the more folds you have, the more information you're able to process more quickly, more efficiently. And that goes for everything, not just emotions, any kind of stimulus. So people who are diagnosed with conditions where they have slower reaction times, maybe they have Alzheimer's, those people tend to have a smaller amount of folds in their brain. So this just goes beyond being able to regulate emotion. This is everything that you do on a daily basis. And your brain is pretty important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we want a higher brain function.
Yes.
We want to be able to fire on all cylinders at the end of the day and be essentially the best version of ourselves, being quicker to process information, being quicker to utilize that information, and also being quicker to be in control and on top of things. That's the simplicity of it all. So this sounds like this is not something that's a one-time fix. It requires a little bit of consistency.
Yes, absolutely. The more you do anything, the better you get at it. And I mean, just doing something once, going to the gym once, what benefit do you see from that, right? So what benefit are you going to see from this if you only do it the one time? It is a practice, and you always get better the more you practice something. And
there are definitely benefits to when one decides to set time aside to meditate. There's aspects of where you're located. Location is important.
Yes.
Surroundings are important. Sound is important. Is it quiet? Is it a bit noisy? Smells. Being aware of taking inventory of basically all the senses, heightened senses, and using that to better focus and better understand what your goal is or what your objective is. I would say it is probably quite hard to meditate or practice mindfulness on a very busy subway.
Yes.
In New York City.
You could do it though. I believe if you really focused and really worked on it, you could do it. And I think that is one of the biggest things the biggest myths that people believe truly about meditating, that you have to sit in a specific sort of yoga pose with your legs crossed and you have to bring your middle finger to your thumb and do a nice big om or something. You don't have to. You could be moving. You could be walking. You could have your eyes open. You don't have to be laying down. You don't have to be sitting down. It's about the focus. And sure, those things may help you to focus a little bit more easily because it just kind of takes away other stimulus that you're surrounded by all the time, but it's not impossible.
Well, I'm glad that you said you don't have to sit with your legs crossed because I don't have the flexibility to do that. So that's a big upside for me. I took a big sigh of relief. I can walk around and practice some mindfulness and meditation.
I'm really glad we're opening this whole new chapter in your life, this new journey you're about to embark on.
Absolutely. So as we're getting in a little bit more into the practicality of how one meditates, I would ask you personally, what are some ways that you personally benefit from meditation, or what are your techniques and ways about going things?
So I'm a person who tends to be really, really busy. I find one of the largest things that helps me is to set a specific time limit. Because if you're worried about getting to the next thing you have to do, the next appointment. Maybe you're taking a break from work and you don't want to be away from your desk for a long period of time, and you don't want to be, like shirking other duties that you have to be able to take some time for yourself. So set a 5-minute timer on your phone. When it goes off, you're done. You don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, how long have I been sitting here? Has it been too long? And then you're building up that stress, building up that anxiety, which is quite literally the opposite of what you're trying to do through meditation. So decide how much time you have, right? If it's 30 seconds, if it's a minute, if it's 5 minutes, if it's 10, and know, okay, this is my time. I'm going to focus fully for this amount of time that I have, and then I'll return to what I was doing before. So you kind of just take that extra stress piece out of it. And then to just find a place where you feel comfortable. I don't really like sitting in hard chairs or on a really hard floor. You start to notice, oh, my back doesn't have any support. I'm starting to feel some aches and pains. That is really distracting to me from that meditation. And then I'm not able to focus on what I was trying to focus on. So that's a big thing as well. Finding a comfy seat. Have you ever seen those giant beanbag chairs? Like the really, really large ones, not just like the average kindergarten beanbag chairs, like the full body.
Yeah.
That honestly would be my preferred way of meditating always. One of those gigantic beanbag chairs.
Yeah. So I know for me, it's, I guess my best way that I try and meditate and practice mindfulness is I'll oftentimes start my day off. It's kind of like a never-ending process. But I do start my day off with a quiet time, usually some music of some sort. And it's usually not hard rock, heavy metal music. It's more so just like inspirational music or something to kind of just, it's almost like it's helping the sun rise, if that makes sense.
I like that.
But it's not necessarily doing that, obviously, but it eases you into your day. And then I'll usually read maybe a passage or something from the Bible, and then I'll try and focus on what I read throughout the day. When times are quiet, I sit and I contemplate. And things like that. As you know, sometimes I like to share with you some of my discoveries. But then what I'll do is I'll go back to the end of the day and I'll pick up where I left off in a time of quiet. But rather than just sitting and taking inventory, I'll do journaling. I just got into journaling.
Oh, very good.
So I'll sit and I'll just write down my thoughts. I'll write down things regarding my day, but I'll also write down things from my day regarding the thing that I read, to try and tie it all in to better be more aware of myself, my weaknesses, my strengths, but also to strategically go forward to be a better version of myself.
Yes, yeah. There are two things that I really, really love about everything you just said. So we see that consistency piece, right? You're trying to return to it throughout the day. You didn't just do it in the morning and then everything goes out the window when some bad driver cuts you off on the way to work and you forget, I'm trying to practice my mindfulness today. So you came back to it. You wanted to really learn something from that experience you had in the morning and take that throughout the rest of your day, which I think is really powerful. That's a really cool point. And then at the end of the day, journaling. That can be a kind of meditation as well. And I think people don't consider that. It's not something you're doing with your eyes closed. Hopefully that would be weird. But you can take some time to be in the moment through writing down your thoughts and feelings. And that is what meditation is all about, right? It's about being present in the current moment. So that's a phenomenal way to look at meditation as well.
Yeah. So we looked at some of the how-tos. I think you mentioned like having surroundings that are beneficial. So not sitting on a hard wood chair or sitting on a stool or something that's going to be uncomfortable after an amount of time, but rather sitting in a comfortable space, being able to essentially sit and just go, with yourself.
Yeah.
That's a great way to kind of start up your meditative process. So taking a seat in a place that is calm and quiet, right? There's also setting time limits.
Yes.
Because people do have stuff to do throughout the day, let's be fair.
Yeah.
And then there's this taking inventory of the body, feeling your breath, things like that. Do you want to expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, noticing how you feel is very powerful. And I even said this in my weightlifting class I taught last night, that taking that time just to notice what's going on is such a great way to get to know yourself and your body and what is going on with it today. And it may change how you go throughout the rest of the day or things that you do because you notice, ooh, I have a little ache there or a crick in my back. Maybe I should roll that later. I'm feeling like I'm a little dehydrated. Maybe I should get some more water. But you're taking the time to be able to notice that. So noticing the physical cues that are happening from your body, from your your muscles to how your brain is feeling, and then absolutely noticing your breath. Breath is so powerful in all areas of life, and oxygen is what makes you go. It's what makes your organs work. It's what helps your blood to flow normally. You need oxygen. So we want to make sure we get as much of it as we possibly can. So focusing on a deeper breath is a great, great way to center yourself. It naturally calms the mind.
As a trainer, I think we both can agree. One of the things that I've seen benefit my clients tremendously is not so much changing up their form. It's not getting them to lift heavier weight or move faster or do certain things. It's the simplicity of breathing.
Yeah.
How much that alone can help up your performance. Like
and
you said.
A lot of people don't know how.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know how to breathe. They don't know how to take in I tell them, I call it the belly breath or the opera singer's breath.
Yes.
Right? So a lot of people don't know how to inhale and exhale there, how to do a lot of the awareness of your body, putting your hands on your stomach, trying to feel where your breath is coming in. A lot of times we breathe and it's shoulder up, shoulder down, shoulder up, shoulder down.
Yep.
And it almost, if you think about an anxious breather, you probably see a person that's got that cat look, shoulders high, everything's kind of heightened. There's no, it doesn't even show an image of calm.
Yeah.
Versus
in the
sitting
neck.
here and taking deep breaths, but you don't really see me in motion. That is a greater display of calm, but it also is greater uptake of oxygen, greater lung strength, all of the different types of things that you just mentioned there.
Yes, and I think that's a really great cue if you are someone who hasn't really done a lot of deep breathing in your life to put a hand on your belly, like literally feel it. Do you feel air going in there? Do you feel expansion when you breathe in? Do you feel collapse when you breathe out? If not, work on increasing that awareness and getting a little bit better breathing with your gut. I know for women who typically want to try to suck in and hold in your middle quite a bit, that can be really difficult because from a young age, you're kind of taught to stand like that. You're taught to hold everything in. I was a ballet dancer. You are taught to hold everything in. They would come around and they would, smack our legs or smack our stomach and say, why did that move? Which was a little traumatic for me as a child. But even sometimes with other kinds of sports, maybe it is a performance kind of sport and you have to look a certain way, you naturally want to hold everything really, really tight. So that doesn't help us when it comes to our breath. So when I started a little bit more singing as I got older and had a little bit more formal training with that, I had to learn to breathe completely the opposite way. Really expanding through the middle, expanding through the gut as I breathed in, and really collapsing as I breathed out, because you get a lot of core support when you breathe that way. You're working those muscles that help to support the rest of your body, your back, and you get a lot more power in your breath.
Absolutely. If you guys didn't know, Dani's a great singer. Just thought we should put that out there.
We're not going to sing on the podcast.
Just in case, maybe down the road she decides she's going to break out into a song. But when you talked about that, putting your hands on your belly and practicing breathing, I always end my clients' workouts with that. Lay on your back. I'll usually put a towel over the eyes just so you're not staring up into the light. And we just practice deep breathing. And it's crazy how, because usually at the end of the exercise, it's like hard work, right? Heart rate is quite high. Heart rate is active. The body is pretty flushed at that state. When we lay on our back, we have the towel over our eyes and we're practicing deep breathing exercises. I'm usually trying to guide them with like a voice. It's like having a live Calm app with you, right?
Yeah.
But then once we're done, and it only takes like 2 minutes, just seeing the significance in the drop of the heart rate and how, and we don't like as soon as they're done, just get up and go, because you want to make sure that they're taking their time and practicing slow movements to get back to their best self. But that is a great time to even practice your breathing exercises at the end of your workouts. Or I even tell people as well, practice your deep breathing before bed. Lay in your bed and just practice your breathing. You actually see that you'll fall asleep faster too. And that's a great time to do meditation too and practice that mindfulness. Right?
So what's great about this, not to call Daron out, but when we discussed possibly doing this topic as an episode, he told me, oh, I don't really do that. Like, I don't meditate. You're going to have to take the lead on this one. I don't really know much about meditation. And here he is taking his clients through breathing exercises, folks.
Yeah.
Daron Raynor, the man, the myth, the legend, knows how to meditate.
Oh, boy. Yeah. Yeah, no, there's a lot more to it. I think
we can't put it in a box.
You can't put it into a box. That's the best way to put it. Especially, like I said, when we look at the definition of it all, it's literally just practicing present, being reflective,
Yes.
and deciding to move with it, not in a destructive way, but looking to better ourselves. That's the point of this whole podcast, is to grow holistically. You know?
Absolutely. And that kind of brings us to our last piece of how to meditate as well. Not chastising yourself if you become distracted or if something goes wrong, if someone interrupts your meditation. Life happens.
Yeah.
You know, do your best to try to pull yourself back to that awareness. And just that practice of being able to go from a distracted state to one that is a little bit more aware is just a phenomenal skill to have in life in general, because you will have things that will interrupt you all the time in your life. But being able to center yourself, to come back from that, where you pick back up, is very, very, very important. So if you're sitting, you're taking your 5 minutes, don't be upset if something happens and you start thinking about the grocery list that you forgot to make for after work, or you didn't send your kid with the Valentine's that he needed for Valentine's Day. Oops, it happens, you know? Come back to what's happening right now, because you can only control what's happening right now. And all that stuff will still be there in 5 minutes when you pick it back up. Yeah.
Yeah. But like you said, you're now in a place where you can strategize and where you can think clearly.
Yes.
You know, so before, where you
shaming.
just anxiety is induced, it's now that that's stressed, I can objectively handle this without my emotions being attached to it. And a lot of times that's where we struggle. I can speak for myself. That's where I struggle as well, is sometimes I allow my emotions to be attached to specifically behaviors that people may do. So if someone wrongs me, or if somebody does something that I don't like, because I allow my emotions to be attached to it, and I feel that they're attaching their emotions to me as a person,
Yeah.
now my judgment is cloudy, and I don't know how to diffuse the situation, or I don't know how to give the right next answer to
Your
curb
amygdala
us.
is not functioning correctly.
Exactly. There's not a lot of folds going on up here, people. But now that we practice this meditation and we try and be more aware, even if you have to take a second. So let's say, and this does not happen, but let's say Dani decides she's having a bad day and she kind of fires off at me something. I don't have to respond right away. I can take 30 seconds, a minute, to kind of sit there and maybe even bite my time by saying, like, how you doing? Or, you know what I mean?
Or leave.
Or
Get up
leave,
and
yeah, exactly.
Leave the office, take a lap.
And just take some time for yourself to ground yourself. Get it together. Maybe it's nothing wrong with you, and that's okay. It's okay to see, like, oh, it's nothing wrong with me. I can come back and handle this. Or maybe there is something that you could have done better, and then you can better come in and resolve that issue, you know?
Remember that next time I yell at you.
Yeah, we'll remember that next time.
It happens so often.
So, Dani, there's practical ways that we can be guided in our meditation.
Yes.
Right? What are some of these ways?
So we already talked about distraction. Sometimes we tend to be distracted by the same things over and over again. So I think it's really great to notice what in particular is distracting you. And if it's something that does happen quite often, we need to get to the root of whatever is going on with that, so that you don't continue to be distracted by it every time you come back to your meditation. And it is really natural for your mind to wander. We have a lot of different things going on up here. It's why your brain is so big. There's a lot of stuff happening. Hopefully, there's a lot of stuff happening up there. So it's your brain's job, to filter through all that information. So let it do its job, right? And then we just go right back to what we were intending to do. You are in the driver's seat, right? Start with a shorter meditation as well. So we don't want to try to start with like a 30-minute meditation trying to stay completely silent. That doesn't make a lot of sense, right? So if you're searching on YouTube for a meditation video that you want to try to follow along with, or maybe you're just trying to do it by yourself alone, start with something that's a little bit shorter, that's a little bit more manageable, because we're not going to be at Olympic athlete status with these meditations immediately. Those people took a lot of training to get to where they were, to be proficient at their sport. You need to take some time to be proficient in this skill as well. So take that time. It's okay. If you start to become restless, come back to your breath. That is a really, really easy way to ground yourself. So we talked about using that belly breathing. There are many breathing techniques that we could use. I mean, it would take us forever to go through all of those things today, but you can even search them on the internet. Search breathing techniques. There are ways that you can count, practice inhaling for 4 counts, practice exhaling for 4 counts, gradually start to increase. Maybe you go to 6, then to 8, then to 10. You're also building phenomenal lung capacity as you do that. So come back to a focus point that is connected with your breath, and it'll get your whole body to kind of get with the program, get back online, get in it to win it. If you're struggling to stay awake, if it's nighttime and you are trying to relax, maybe you are laying in bed and practicing your breathing, so try to get to bed a little bit more easily. If you're not wanting to do that, if you're wanting to stay more awake, straighten your posture. Maybe get to a place where you do have a chair with a back on it that can support you, so you're less likely to kind of fall over into a slump and fall asleep. We definitely don't want to do that while we're at work. You can also turn your attention to things that are happening around you. So maybe you're not as focused on yourself and how you're feeling. Maybe you're hearing sounds happening outside the room you're in. Maybe you're smelling someone who is cooking dinner in another room. It's okay to listen to those things as well, because they are still existing in the present moment. So you can breathe and pay attention to what's happening around you as well.
Yeah, I think just to kind of throw a little bit in there, as well, take your time, despite the fact that you're trying to maybe do a shorter meditation. You don't have to, it's not a rushing type of process.
No.
It's very easy to think that things have to be moving at a certain pace, and it's okay to slow it down, even if you only get through, let's say, phase 1 out of 5 phases of objectives that you have in your meditation.
Man, you got through phase 1.
Exactly. And celebrate that.
Yes.
Allow it to be a building block into growing the best person that is yourself.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal point. How you end is also incredibly important. And that's not something I even thought about when we were, kind of writing this up and dictating what we were going to discuss. But how we finish is really going to help your outlook and how you approach your next session when you meditate. So if you're not looking at it with, wow, I'm so proud I just did that. I am so grateful for the time and ability I had to take this 5 minutes for myself. If you're not sitting with that joy and that peace and that gratitude, you're just really not going to want to do it again, number one. And you're throwing all that progress that you just made kind of out the window. You're kind of spitting all over it. Like, wow, I did this 5-minute thing, but it was terrible. I just did a really horrible job sitting there. And I thought about 3 things that weren't related to my breathing, and it was just the worst, and we're just going to give up now.
Yeah.
That's a very extreme attitude to have.
I think that's a great chance to bring the journaling in.
Yeah.
To kind of take time to write down quick responses and kind of not tuck that away, but write down responses, save it, and then maybe at another time, take a look at it and see, okay, like this, wasn't a fan of this, but that's okay. How will I adjust that for my next session or for my next experience, whatever the case may be for that person. But don't let it just be thoughts and then they kind of just fade off into something, and then you are bound to repeat it. Write down, make note. I think especially, I talked to my uncle who was a professional bodybuilder at a time, and he would always write down in his workout journal what his feelings were after the workout, what his feelings were after breakfast, lunch, and dinner. He would always make a note of everything so that he can see, okay, this works, I can repeat this. Don't know about this, even time of day and all of those types of things. So you can get really into that, right? But the bottom line is just have a record of what's going on. Have a record of your experiences, not just I remember or I think. You have it there in front of you. And then it's a great way to come back to it and you see 3 weeks later, oh, wow, I've progressed here,
Yeah.
So.
Oh, that's so great. I love that, taking stock.
Yeah, exactly.
That's important, but not stressing about it either. If you forget to journal about your experience, don't beat yourself up.
Right. And again, it doesn't have to be a lot. You don't have to write novels. Just write little things. Happy at 11 a.m. because I ate this.
Draw yourself a little smiley face.
Yeah.
A little emoji.
Exactly.
With heart eyes.
So there's resources that one can use, right?
Yes,
when it comes to guided meditations.
So we discussed YouTube videos. Great resource, YouTube. Phenomenal stuff. I mean, really, there is no wrong way to breathe, to sit still. So there are a lot of really great resources that you can check out. And maybe you find someone whose voice you like a little bit better than another, and you kind of keep on with that same person or that same resource. But there are some apps that I really, really enjoy. Calm, which you mentioned, is a really, really big one right now. There's a lot of ads out about it. It's pretty popular. Calm and Headspace, really, I would say, are the two that are the most prevalent. They do have a free version and a paid version. So obviously you're going to get a little bit more through the paid version. than you are with the not paid version. But one of the things I really like about both of them is they have what are called bedtime stories. And there was a period in my life that I was really struggling with insomnia, falling asleep, staying asleep. I was also very stressed. So I actually did use the Headspace app and particularly enjoyed the bedtime stories that really took you through a focused story, and they gave you all the sensory details that you were supposed to be paying attention to during the meditation as they're taking you through whatever storyline is happening. They're giving you those little points to pay attention to. So I found those very, very helpful. There's also an app called Insight Timer. And the thing that I think is really cool about this one is we talked about setting certain time limits. You can actually do that in Insight Timer. I do believe it is a paid for app, but you can say, today I want to meditate for 5 minutes or 8 minutes, and I want this kind of stimulation or this kind of voice in the background. And you can really tailor your own meditation very specifically, which I think is really cool. Very interesting.
Yeah, I think we've talked about it in another episode, but even like allowing yourself to see certain types of stimulus as well. So you may not be at Yosemite National Park, but you're maybe watching sunrise Earth, right? Or I know that when I was in elementary school, and for some reason we did journaling in elementary school. I don't know what for. It was probably just to help us improve our writing.
Yeah.
But the teacher would always play like some soft music, or would play an ambience of different locations. Maybe you're at the beach, so you're hearing the water flowing, or maybe you're in the jungle and you're hearing, different birds and different types of things. But it helps to kind of set the mood, especially she would always give us a prompt that had to do with like the location. So you're not just writing
It's
anything
themed.
and stuff. It's themed, yeah. But I really like the bedtime stories one. I was talking to my girlfriend a few weeks ago, actually, and she was saying that she was struggling with sleep. And I said one thing that helped me, and it was something I stumbled on. It wasn't like I intentionally did it.
Yeah.
But before I would go to bed, I would listen to this writer. She's an author. Her name is Ellen White. And people would take her stuff and put it into audiobooks because she was very, very good at commentating on things in the Bible. And she has this book called The Desire of Ages. And you can listen to it, and it's literally just the life of Jesus. And she has a whole commentary on it. And she goes through all 5 senses of everything. She goes through feelings. She goes, and the reading, she's dead. This was back in like 1870 that she wrote this.
Yeah.
But the readers are very calm voices. They're very soothing, and it helps. You actually almost feel like you're there. And before you know it, you're knocked out. You're dreaming along with it. So I really like that Bible story or, listening to bedtime stories type thing because it does help. Sometimes it ain't broke. If you listen to bedtime stories when you were a little kid, you don't have to get rid of it just because you're a grown adult. It's okay,
Right, yeah. Enjoy your life.
Exactly.
Well, I think it's a good point, too, that it doesn't necessarily have to be a guided meditation either. So you can put on a particular kind of music. You can search Yellow Brick Cinema on YouTube, and they have a lot of really calming music. So you can search for a particular track that you enjoy, and it's just meant to help you slow down. Nothing super specific. Search calming music if that's something that you feel would be helpful to you. Doesn't need to be a voice telling you exactly what to do and when to breathe. Things like yoga videos you can search online. Those can be used for meditation as well because you're focused on what you're doing. Or you should be while you're doing yoga. I hope you are. So all those things can be considered meditation as well. So look for those resources. They are so readily available. There are a couple podcasts that I really like as well. One is quite literally called the Daily Meditation Podcast. That's so easy. It's like 5 minutes every single day.
Yeah.
Here's what we're talking about. Here's what we're focusing on. And there's another podcast called Meditation Minis, which are just really, really short things that you can pick up throughout your day. So lots and lots of things available if you just look.
Well, there you go. Well, we also have a special treat, don't we?
We do, yeah.
Okay.
If anyone listening is interested, we are going to do a really short 5-minute meditation just here, just to kind of close out everything we've discussed today, remembering the little tips that we gave you guys of, trying to be in the present moment, trying to focus on that breath, and not chastising ourselves when we don't do it perfectly. So we're going to practice for just a moment. If you'd like to find a comfy seat, if you are driving, please don't close your eyes. But if you feel led to close your eyes, you're in a comfy spot that feels right to you, please feel free. We'll start together here. If you close your eyes or keep them open, either way, we're going to soften them. So I want you to imagine that they're just kind of sitting very, very gently in your eye sockets. If you prefer to lie down, find a comfy spot. And we're going to start to soften our posture here as well. So I want you to notice how your neck feels in this position, whether you're sitting or lying down. What do your shoulders feel like? Your upper back, your lower back. And we're just going to start to soften that posture to be a little bit less rigid. And we're going to start to enter a little bit more of a calming breath here, just very gentle in through the nose and let it come out softly through the mouth. It's okay for that breath to be a little bit audible. And every time you breathe out, it's going to drive that softening of your shoulders, of your upper spine, of your lower back. Perhaps you do have a chair with a back that you'd like to release into, letting it hold a bit of your weight. Maybe it's that floor that's pushing up against the backs or the bottoms of your feet. Continuing to breathe here, drawing your attention to that singular focus of coming in through the nose and that gentle drawing out through the mouth. As you feel that breath entering your nose, notice that temperature of the air. How does it feel entering your nasal cavity, traveling down your throat, and coming into your lungs? Where do we feel expansion happening? Maybe it's really stuck up in the chest. We feel a little bit more movement in our shoulders. And I want to invite you to send that breath a little bit lower, using the belly. Gently pushing the belly button away as we breathe in. And gently closing that belly button back towards your spine as you breathe out. That abdomen is going to begin to expand more like a balloon, finding expansion in all directions and not just up and down through the shoulders. We feel our back and our ribs opening as we breathe, not just expanding to the front, but also expanding to the back and through both sides of our rib cage. We're going to consider those tiny muscles that hold our rib bones together here. Feeling them find that little stretch, that little opening as those ribs expand even more fully. And we're going to continue with that nice deep breath, sending it lower into the pelvis. So now we've filled all of the available space from the top of our neck, the top of our head, all the way down to where our sits bones might connect with our chair. And if we're in need of relaxation in our limbs today, we're going to send that breath even further into the palms of our hands and the soles of our feet. Releasing tension in the joints of our fingers and in our toes. And maybe allowing those toes to spread a little bit in our shoes and settle into a position that's a bit more comfortable. Breathing out, let your weight sink down into your hips. Allow the body to be heavy for a moment. We're not so concerned about using our own weight, our own strength to hold ourselves up. As we feel the tension leaving our limbs, our head gets a little bit lighter, almost as if a broom is sweeping out all of the clutter. We're breathing in deeply through the top of the head. As we breathe out, push that clutter away. Maybe noticing our skull is feeling a bit lighter. Starting to let go of tension that we're feeling in our scalp. And letting that tension melt away through our forehead, our temples, and our jaw. Perhaps allowing it to open. As we breathe, we bring that openness forward through the face, sinuses opening behind the cheeks and behind the eyes. So we really feel our head starting to take on that bit of lightness. Send out any stress that might be left here through the soles of your feet, the palms of your hands, and the top of your head, releasing muscular tension, releasing emotional tension, allowing ourselves to notice how our body is feeling right now, as opposed to when we started. We'll continue with a gentle breath, slowly beginning to open the eyes if they were closed, readjusting to any light in the room or outside. We'll take one big breath together all the way down into the bottoms of the feet, in through the nose, out nice and big through the mouth. And now you're ready to go out to the rest of your day, feeling a little bit more centered, a little bit more grounded, remembering that nature does not hurry, yet everything is still accomplished. So take these skills that you learned today. I hope you feel a little bit more calm, a little bit more refreshed. How do you feel, Daron?
Rested.
Rested. Good. One of the things I think I notice a lot after I finish a meditative practice like that is not only do I feel more rested, but I also have a little bit more energy, because we've worked on training that attention. So this was just a very, very simple meditation. We really focused on what the body was feeling and specifically releasing tension in your muscles. But like I said, there are lots of ways to meditate. So I hope everyone feels a little bit more confident in at least their knowledge, maybe not their practice of meditation, but maybe this discussion has given you some things to think about.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Dani.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining me, Daron. Even though
Yes.
you do not meditate, you did such a great job. Thank you all for joining us today on this episode of the Know Better, Be Better podcast. I am Dani Ondreka.
And I'm Daron Raynor. We'll see you next time. Be well.